In the darkest blackness of human carnage and suffering, police, fire, and EMS intercede on behalf of mankind. God himself reaches out to those who suffer through their hands. Their service is a clear and unmistakable demonstration that God does not abandon people in the storms of life.
You know, you're not God's gift to women. And just because you wear the uniform doesn't mean you have a free ticket to sleep in everybody's bed. That's wrong. And then you wonder why you're a jacked up mess. I mean, I'll tell people the truth. Well, you can't talk that way to us. Well, I'm your chaplain. You're darn right I'm going to talk that way to you if I'm going to help you. You know, stop messing around. Stop doing what you're doing. It isn't right. And you know what? I mean, whatever it takes to be real, I think the bottom line is people will respect and respond to that, and they'll call you, like in the case of this law enforcement official. I only wish that things could have worked out different for them, for that department, for that family. Think about this. Do you want to go through the pain and the suffering and the shame and the embarrassment of having a line of duty suicide in your department? I don't want to have to go through that. Line of duty death is bad enough, but now if it's a line of death suicide, maybe that's a new term we ought to come up with, a line of duty suicide. You know, maybe that's something that we can work on. It's like, yeah, but I don't want to have that happen. I mean, there's people, the first responders in my community that I care about deeply. And, you know, when we had 3 of our own shot as they were trying to apprehend a bad guy, and I literally was told looked like you're going to be doing so-and-so's funeral. I was like, I remember saying, Lord, absolutely not. I like him. He's a good guy. And there's no way, I don't know what you got to do, God, but you better get involved in this one. And I had that conversation all the way to the hospital. I think I even talked to you a little bit as I was driving. Man, I'll tell you what, I was locked on. I was in the zone. And I'm like, I am not doing another line of duty death funeral, and especially for him, because this is a good dude. And guess what? Didn't have to do anybody's funeral. In fact, they're all 3 back at work.
Right.
All three of them sustained gunshots, and all 3 of them are back to work. I'm like, thank you, Jesus. Amen. And so the faith component is an advantage. Let's not cheat our departments. Let's not cheat our agencies. Let's not cheat our first responders out of knowing about this faith component, this advantage. It's like, well, tell me about that. Well, listen, do you know that you represent him anyway? That badge is symbolic of your ministry. That's your ministry. You know, do you know the one who called you into service? Well, he didn't call me into service. I took the test because I wanted to. Well, who put that in you? You know, why is it in you? My nephew, he's a firefighter in the state of Connecticut, and he wants to come out here and be a firefighter. And you know, he's always had that in him. And he got the bug years ago when I took him on a tour through our station here. And so I was thinking about it. Why is it so strong in him to do this? And my brother said, he's always wanted to be a firefighter. It's in him. He's always wanted to be a firefighter. And it's like, how cool is that? That it's just in him. This is what he wants to do. It's like, that is a divine call. And so guess what? If he hangs around me any length of time, he's going to be hearing about stuff like this. It's like, dude, you are a minister in your own right, like I am. You know, now, so what does that mean? Well, act like it. Act like a man of honor and integrity. That's what I tell first responders is that, well, of course things are jacked up. Look at the way you act. Look at the way you treat people. You know, and I have to watch myself. I have to take a step back, and I have to refocus, and I have to reconnect. So should you. Don't lose touch with that. So we're talking about first responder suicide, and just to kind of recap here, I think there's no way that we have a profile that people can fit in. There's no profile. Nobody is exempt. Nobody.
When we took that class from St. Petersburg College, it was a train the trainer on suicide prevention. And they were really harping on the idea that we can prevent all suicides.
Yeah.
And going through, it was a a full hard day, and I can remember we had a chief in there that we respect, and when the whole thing, I could understand what they were saying because I myself had gone through some of those feelings and so on and so forth, but it was like it still didn't fit, and it was like I don't remember seeing any of that in myself. I don't remember seeing that in any of the other ones that I knew who had taken their life by suicide.
Yeah.
It was kind of confusing by the end of it. And I can remember this one guy got up and he said, "Hey, I've listened because I really wanted to understand so I could help others."
Right.
But he said, "I can tell you that none of this fits what just happened to me." And he just lost one of his best friends to suicide.
Yeah.
He said, "None of that would have helped me to have prevented his death." And we were close.
Yeah. Yeah.
And that's what we see. I mean, just like you said, there's no profile. There's, I think as first responders, sometimes as when we do disconnect, that's the first clue. Disconnection, isolation,
Right.
and that helplessness and hopelessness. Faith will give you hopeful.
Absolutely.
It will get you through things that otherwise you feel alone in.
Yeah. Yeah.
So, I just wanted to throw that in there.
And I'm glad you did, because I've often believed, and this is my own personal feeling, is that, okay, so you're telling me that there's really no profile to fit? No, because none of us is exempt. People would look at me, and they have looked at me and said, "Well, I wish I could be more like you." Well, no, don't be more like me. Be more like God. Be more like Him. Don't be more like me, because I have flaws, I fail, and I have shortcomings. And I truthfully have nothing to offer you apart from Him. I'm just a guy, just like you are. So there's really no profile, but there are risk factors. And when we continue to violate the rules, if you will, and keeping ourselves healthy and keeping a balance, when you do get disconnected and isolated, when you are put in a situation where you lose your identity, these are risk factors. You have to develop interests outside of the job. You must absolutely positively do this, because one day you too will retire. And what will you go on to? Well, I got nothing. Well, I have a wife at home that I neglected and don't even know her, and she doesn't know me. And besides, she's been cheating on me anyway, so what's the difference? You know how many times I've heard that? I had one first responder tell me, "My wife is sleeping with every other," whether it was I'm not going to tell you what it was, firefighter or Leo, with everyone in the city. Ooh. I'm like, "Well, what's going on, dude?" It's like, "Well, I don't know." So, well, you're never home. You're never home.
When you're home.
When you're home, right. And you know what? I found myself falling into that same trap. When I'm home, I'm not home. And my wife says, can you be present for me for a minute? I'm like, "Oh, I'm sorry. Because I don't have regular hours. Even though you have a shift, that really doesn't matter. So I don't have any set hours. I'm always on the clock. I'm never off. I just have to kind of go to sleep or shut my phone off. But and I don't do well with either one. So you need to have connectivity. You need meaningful relationships and purpose. So that could definitely help. The church and faith can definitely help you with that. Just trying to throw some things out there just in the hopes that some of it's going to stick. And your service has to be, you represent God, not just a flawed system, because there's no perfect system. There's no perfect administrator. There's no perfect administration. And people are going to fail you. And the same way that chaplains have to be trained, firefighters have to be trained, police officers, deputies, we all have to go through training. Our leaders need training. And too often they take a test that says they're qualified. Now they check the box. Here you go. Well, that doesn't really constitute training to me.
Holistic.
Not holistic. I've been doing this now for more than 30 years. I've been in public ministry. Every single year I go to continuing education. I submit myself to training, ongoing leadership training every year. I surround myself with people that I can learn from, that I can bounce things off of, because even though I'm a leader in my church, in my community, I need constant sharpening in leadership training. I have to have that. I need rebalancing, refocusing. I need regular oil changes, tire rotations. I need all that. And so that's my commitment, is that I will do my very best to be the very best that I can be for you. This issue of suicide, it's not going to fix itself. It's not going to go away. And having the right chaplain in the department with you is very valuable. And my friend that I referenced has a very good relationship, not only with the mayor, with the department chief, and he's a good man. My friend is a good man. He's a good pastor. He has a gift for what he does. He cares about people. And I've often, I haven't told him this. Maybe he'll listen to this one day. I'd love to be more like him. I mean, he just does such a good job. And we do take training together each year. We do see each other at training events. But a good department chaplain can help with perspective and balance. And also to take some of the load off of you as an administrator, because let's face it, there's been a suicide in this department. There's a lot going on right now.
Yeah.
A lot going on. And the chaplain was tasked with breaking the news to the first shift coming on roll call. He had to actually go in and let these officers know so-and-so has died by suicide, which was a tremendous shock. By the time the next roll call came, word had already spread, but he still was there as a presence and so forth. So never underestimate the value of a good chaplain. Never stifle or hold back, faith in your department or your agency, because it actually is a great help and an asset for us. And I
want to add something to that too. As an administrator, don't dampen, hinder, or throw obstacles in your chaplain program. Let them be autonomous,
right.
And otherwise it's not going to be effective. If you try to run the chaplain program as an admin, it's not going to work. Embrace it, support it, make sure that everybody knows that it's available and it is confidential.
Right.
But I like what's been done here, in that the peer support program is led by a chaplain.
Right.
I think that brings the best of all of it together.
Yeah, I believe it. I believe so. And I think in a closing maybe concept or thought here, this is not a one size fits all, because no two agencies are identical.
Right.
What works at your department is not going to work somewhere else, and vice versa. So you have to say, okay, well, this is what works for us. Great. Now embrace it, enhance it. As an administrator, you have to promote it. You can't just be like, hey, good job, attaboy. You actually have to be the one promoting it, letting people know that, hey, and I'm only saying this through experience, where I know, especially in the my role as a career pastor, when people just tolerate you, that does demoralize and demean you, when they just tolerate. I guess we better let him get up and say a few words. No, don't just let me get up and say a few words. I don't need the aggravation. But if you're if you're looking like, hey, we want to hear from you, we want you. We would be honored if you would get up and say a few words here. We used to do a lot of that in our area, where, and this is not a critical slam against anybody, but there was a time when we were doing a lot of badge pinning promotions, and I was sharing my perspective as a chaplain's commentaries in the program, and I'll tell you what, people really responded to that and appreciated it. And then, like anything else in life, a few transitions in personnel. This one does this, that one does that. And next thing you know, it's just not even an issue anymore. You don't get invited anymore. And it's like, that's too bad that that's been let go of.
That brought a lot of dignity and honor to that.
Yeah, it did.
And it did make a big difference. And in my career, that was one of the things that I had the most feedback from personnel, from new firefighters to our more veteran firefighters. I'm glad that we're doing this now. It's about time.
Right, exactly.
Like I said earlier, I think that might be even, I think the number that they had was 82% of first responder population are believe in God.
Yeah.
And I think in our area, I believe that's a lot higher as we've gone around and actually taught firefighter groups through the academy. I don't remember how many, there were several hundred firefighters that we were able to touch. And that was one of the things that we went around the room. We put all the chairs in a circle and everybody just talk about that. And it was amazing the embarrassment of many who believed in God but weren't going to a church.
Right.
And I can understand that because I spent from about age 22 to 50 unchurched. I wasn't in a church. I believed, but I was empty of that. And that's why I think I fell so low and wasn't able to navigate that darkness and hopelessness that had hit me until you came along. And man, that's the only reason why I think I'm still here today is because of that connection that was made. And it wasn't orchestrated by me. I can tell you that.
Mm-hmm. So I'm going to ask you both a closing question. And I say closing question, it doesn't mean that we have to be done. But before I ask you my closing question, and I'll tell you what it's going to be, but don't answer it yet. So somebody's listening right now, and I don't know who that somebody could be. And they're thinking in terms of, I'm checking out. I'm done. I've had it. What is the likelihood, number one, what is the likelihood that that person is going to reach out for help? And then number two, if you sense something or see something about someone, what should your next course of action be? So I'm sitting here with you and I'm looking into your eyes and I'm like, the lights are on, but this dude ain't home. Something's wrong. I don't know you are so distant. You are disconnected. I don't know what's going on. What's my next course of action? What's the next thing I need to do? And I don't want to hear, call the suicide prevention hotline. I don't want to hear that. That's not what I'm looking for. So before you guys answer, what happened in this case is that his wife started noticing he was going to a dark place very rapidly, and he was saying things that were very concerning. She calls in 911, and I need an ambulance here at my home right away. They're en route. They're coming. They're coming because she's like, this is not good. Well, he goes upstairs and decides to complete suicide with his firearm in their bedroom. Done. Over. Finished. Gone. So, did she do the right thing? What else was she supposed to do? She made the call. She saw something, felt something, and then she did something. She didn't just say, dude, you probably ought to get some professional help. We're beyond that. So what do? I mean, first of all, I'm of the opinion, this is my own personal opinion, and whether you guys agree with it or not, you're free to say. When you get to that level of that darkness and you are so overcome and overwhelmed and it's got you, you ain't asking nobody for help. It's over. It's too late. We don't want you to get to that place. So you have to pay attention, because when it gets to that place, the only thing I believe that will work is divine intervention.
Right.
That's it. Mm-hmm. I mean, he proved that. Oh, you're called. Oh, I mean,
that's what saved me.
Yeah. There you go. So what should be, okay, somebody's listening right now. They're saying, my husband, my wife, my brother, my sister, my daughter, my son, I don't know. They haven't been acting right. Do you think they could be at risk? We're all at risk.
That's your profile.
Yeah.
There's your profile.
That's it. Yeah. Yeah. I mean, I know it's uncomfortable, and I know people don't really want it. Well, that's never going to happen. Every person I've dealt with has said the same thing when it comes to suicide. I never thought he would do it. I never thought this would ever come. I don't even know what to say. If I've heard it once, I've heard it 100 times in my career. Mm-hmm. Is that you all say the same thing. So what do we do?
Yeah. And of those that don't fall into that category, and I'm thinking of one, and I'm trying to be careful here. Mm-hmm. I know of instances where someone has committed suicide from the first responder community, who all the rest of us first responders knew that that's what it was, even though it's not in the logbook as a suicide. It was a suicide. And I've not talked to anyone in the first responder community that I can trust to talk that way to that doesn't agree with me. And from the moment that we heard of that we all didn't think the same thing. And then when you find out some of the other circumstances, situations that were going on, it was like only solidified the idea that that's what had happened. Mm-hmm. But I'll tell you what that does is the last people that he was with, I can't imagine the guilt that they have shouldered and dealt with ever since that. And I heard for the first time the other day, I was doing some research, and I seen the term postvention. Mm. And I think that's another topic that we could get into.
Yeah.
But for instance, in the instance that we've been talking about today, it's that whole department, even probably people that had come on since he left would still be affected, but certainly everybody that he worked with, probably other spouses, they probably did some meeting with other people off duty and so on and so forth, as well as the wife and the family of what could we have done different. That guilt is real. Mm-hmm. And that's a big issue, I think, that we could address in another podcast, is talking about that postvention, because that's something that has to be dealt with too, because it's not going away. There's going to be a lot to have to deal with, and that doesn't matter if it's even our officers who have been shot at or shot, line of duty deaths. All of those things carry some of that same kind of stigma. A husband, wife have a disagreement before he goes to shift that day, and something happens to him on shift. There's just another issue of that guilt, and you just never want to leave that like that. And that's where I think we can be even in another podcast, is talking about, and maybe some classes in the future, about the relationships that can be, whether it's a husband, wife, children, mother-in-law, father-in-law, grandparents. Most people, like in your case, you grew up with a first responder family. Others, like your wife, did not. So there's always going to be those misconceptions. There's going to be
the disconnection.
Disconnection. I don't understand why he had to leave on Christmas when his kids are opening the presents, or at a birthday party, or whatever. And those are some real things too that fester, that disconnection, that try to invade that relationship. And those are things that don't have to. there can be we can teach some principles, some ideas, some things that you can do to prevent those types of things from happening. I think that statement you used earlier, don't just say something, do something.
Do something.
That's where have probably fallen down, because nobody wants to talk about suicide. Right. Nobody wants to talk about, hey, you don't look like you're on your A game today. What's going on? And believe me, I've seen that a lot of times with guys that have come on shift with me. It's like, man, something's going on in his life. And it could be so many different things.
Yeah.
It could be his dog died. And that's real too. I mean, honestly.
I think, and I want to see if you would weigh in on that as well. I mean, we're just asking the question, what do we do? What can be done? What should a person do right now? And they're worried.
I knew that was coming. I've been thinking about it, but then you started talking, and
I took it off track
my mind
a little bit.
this way for a second.
Yeah.
So let me hang on just a second. Let me back up on one thing you said, because we talk about doing something. So I want to do this. You talked about us leaving for a call while the kids are opening Christmas presents, and the misconception is, since they're running and in a hurry and didn't say anything and just, got up and left, that they want to go, they're excited to go, they didn't want to be here, and they don't want to be with us. And that couldn't be further from the truth.
Right.
We are leaving in a hurry because time is against us. By the time we're alerted of that call, we're already behind the 8 ball. And that is the worst time to have it, because we don't want to leave Christmas. We don't want to leave our families. We don't want to leave ever. But we don't, you talked earlier about planning that call out. We don't get that. And
we don't have that luxury.
I'm okay with that. I don't want, because some people say it's a luxury, but I can see a detriment to it going, well, at 2:00 we're having this fire and we don't have the people for it. We don't have, or worst case, you read through it and you go, wow, look at the script. It says we're going to have a fatality today at 2:00. I don't want to do that. I'm not ready for that. So what do? You sit there and worry about it the whole day. Versus, let's train up and get ready to handle whatever, whenever. And then that tone hits, or you're dispatched, or whatever it is, and you just deal with it the best you can, and having that faith and that trust that the decision I make is going to be right, because I'm making it based on biblical principles, not just, I'm going to throw something and hope it works, so.
Well, I think a simple prayer in that is just, okay, Lord, you know what needs to be done. Lead me.